Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marco LaVecchia, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Produce8, and I hope you're doing well. And I'm really excited this afternoon to be joined by Mike Douglas, who's a partner of ours out of the UK, and I'll do an introduction of him a little bit later on. And first, I wanted to take you through who is Produce8 and what program are we talking about for MSPs. We've been around now for a number of years developing an amazing technology that's new for MSPs to bring to market. This term of digital work analytics is something that's becoming more and more common in the MSP space. But yet we've seen a lot of MSPs that haven't made the transition to start delivering digital work analytics. And so I'm going to explain to you exactly what this is and really what problem we're solving for MSPs. And when you take a look at our SaaS offering and the importance of this, of possibly adding this into your MSP practice, there's a number of different benefits that it's going to bring to you. We see the benefits of increased recurring revenue, key differentiation in the marketplace, helping you with a number of different strategies that you can actually develop. And what we've seen now in terms of the future of what we call the MSP work is that there is a transitioning taking place. If you take a look at what MSPs do today, we see a commoditization in the MSP market space. And we're going to talk about that with Mike. We're going to talk about, why he decided to partner with Produce8 and why he felt that it was so significant that he can bring a product like digital work analytics into his business. And we've talked about it for for quite a while now in terms of how MSPs need to differentiate themselves. And when I talk about commoditization, I always like to give this challenge to MSPs that are in the marketplace in terms of taking a look at some of your competition that's in the market today. Take a look at what you guys offer and what they offer. And when we've seen the change in the industry, and we've seen in terms of where it's gone over the years, let's go back all the way to the early 2000s, right? And why am I comparing digital work analytics to what we were doing in early 2000s? Well, when you started taking a look at MSPs that were bringing in remote monitoring and management into their clients' environments, most of the times when you were actually going in and having a conversation with your clients about this solution, not only did you not know exactly what RMN brought into your business, but your customers didn't necessarily know. And we've known that, for instance, the MSP space right now has really revolutionized because of organizations like Enable Technologies or ConnectWise or Kaseya, that they brought these types of solutions in market. And the idea here is that the transition and the change in the MSP space from what we call managed IT and security to the next evolution of the play in the early 2010s of cloud applications was really a significant change. We call these horizons in terms of what's transpired in the MSP space, but also significant plays that most MSPs decided they really need to pay attention to. Some MSPs even decided that cybersecurity and developing an MSSP was critical to their business. But most solutions and technologies, and you take a look at all the RMM players in the industry currently right now, they all have some significant component of security in their portfolio. The next iteration of the next horizon of what we see is really digital work analytics and providing information to your customers that you're actually something not providing them today. And that is really around the people, the employees, and understanding the data. And so the key thing that we're going to talk about a little bit with Mike today is how critical is that data to owning the entire client's environment? When you take a look at it right now, typically any IT spend is around 8% of the IT budget or the overall budget for that business. And that includes the tools that you actually bring into market today. When we talk about digital work analytics, here's the significant play in here. We believe that there's actually an opportunity for you to capture 75% of the overall spend of a business, which is on its employees. And this is where we feel that there's a massive opportunity for MSPs by going in and understanding what's going on in that environment and providing a solution for them that gives them access to information and data. And that data actually comes in the style of a reporting engine that you can actually introduce and share with your customers in terms of what's going on down at the employee level. So I like to kind of talk about digital work analytics, kind of like what RMM was, where actually digital work analytics is like RMM for people. So RMM for technology, DWA is RMM for people. It allows you to be proactive, to understand what's going on in the client's environment, where they can actually see, for instance, around things of meetings or collaboration or lack of focus or sentiment in an organization are things that MSPs aren't providing to their clients today. But with Produce8, you actually have the ability to do that. Next slide, Aaron. And so when we kind of take a look at the next growth opportunity, it really is about understanding the link between technology and employee productivity. And we know that MSPs today are not necessarily having that conversation. You take a look at some of the technologies and infrastructure and projects that MSPs have driven into clients' environments, yet they're not understanding what the impact of those solutions and those technologies that they implemented into them. And Produce8 gives you the ability to understand how technology is impacting the user, how technology is impacting the business. And this is where we say that when you invest in people, it typically dwarfs the spend on IT, because most businesses spend way more money on their people than they do on IT. But yet the MSP is not getting a hold of that. And Produce8 will allow you, with our partner program, to start going in and having those conversations with your customers about employee productivity and the impact of increasing productivity and how it can help them. So when we take a look at it, we take a look at, for instance, all the different things. And what I'm showing you today is three different, what I would call three critical pieces of a business that are impacting employee productivity. That could be meeting overload, meaning there's just way too many meetings taking place in an organization or in a business. Collaboration overload, right? Where there's too many tools that are disrupting them. And then what we call productivity time leak, meaning they're being disrupted by either employees, technology, or a lot of noise that are taking place in the business. And without having a solution in technology that can help you understand what's impacting all of these different areas, or what can we do to help our employees deal with these things, if you don't have a technology like Produce8, there's actually no way for you to gain visibility or have an idea in terms of what's impacting an organization. And we tend to see that employees spend about 2.5 hours per day dealing with distractions. And you take that number, you multiply it by the amount of employees that a business has, you multiply that by, for instance, what happens on a weekly basis. And what happens is you notice that there's tons of hours across all kinds of businesses today that are actually being washed out the window. And the idea and the play in terms of what we want to try and do is really kind of help you out. And with Produce8, it's a great tool that you can actually use to help you expand, acquire, and retain your customers. The expansion part is so critical for any MSP. When you kind of take a look at a lot of businesses today, or MSPs that are on fixed fee managed services contracts, a lot of the times the employees have consumed all the technology in the stack, and yet there's no other products that you can actually sell to them unless an employee adds more employees. The idea here of what we want to try and do with our platform is that with Produce8 and bringing a new value add such as digital work analytics into their business, we have a way to kind of expand and drive more recurring revenue into a particular customer. Same thing on the retention side. When we take a look at MSPs losing customers, or as I mentioned a little bit earlier on before, the commoditization of the MSP space where everybody looks the same, a lot of MSPs are losing customers because another MSP is competing with them and has sold them a solution at a 30-40% discount for the same thing. By deploying a solution like Produce8 and actually spending more time working with that customer on digital work analytics and employee productivity, we feel that we can help retention rates with MSPs by differentiating them from other MSPs. And this becomes a very sticky product because when you actually take a look at it, if somebody wanted to displace your customer or acquire them, you want to hope that they actually see value in a solution like Produce8 and that other MSP doesn't have it. And so you guys actually get to hold on to that customer and keep them around for a long time. And we know what the cost associated with new customer acquisition. And that leads me to our third tier in terms of the value of Produce8 is new customer acquisition. By going out and differentiating yourselves in the market, it gives you a strategic advantage over other MSPs by including digital work analytics into your managed services offering. And this is where we see a massive opportunity for MSPs to go out, acquire, and actually really go out and differentiate yourselves from competition. And as you do new customer acquisition strategies, we feel that Produce8 actually becomes a very important piece to your business. The last piece about new customer acquisition that I will say is even if you can't get the managed service offering and contract from a prospect that you're working on, you can actually sell Produce8 on its own and share with them the value of what this reporting engine and business intelligence tool will actually bring to that customer and drive a recurring revenue stream, but also get yourself into that account. And over time, they can transition onto your managed services paperwork. So when you look at Produce8, we have basically two options, I should say, on our licensing model, but we also have a laptop and a mobile version of Produce8 as well. And why do I bring up the mobile version? It's the first mobile product that an MSP can actually give to their end user customers as a way to differentiate them, but show value as well. And so when a client can actually see what's going on in their environment, and they know that it's been brought from you as the MSP, that's very strategic. It's a very different than a typical motion that an MSP will actually go to market with. And so with Produce8, by having these dashboard views where you can actually see what's going on in the environment, how much time businesses are spending in meetings, the costs associated with those meetings, or sentiment scores, or productivity, or lack of focus, these are the things that are becoming more and more critical for businesses. And if you do research, you'll know that a lot of businesses today are all dealing with productivity issues. And the technology is causing such a disruption in the environment that they actually don't necessarily know what to do. And you have to bring in a tool like Produce8 into the environment. And so we've created a multi-tenancy for MSPs that they can actually use Produce8 to manage all their clients' environments on digital work analytics platform, which is very unique in the industry. And we know the MSP space better than anyone else. And so we've created a blueprint program and a strategy for you to go to market and how to introduce this to your customers. So the whole entire presentation and our webcast today is really to introduce Mike Douglass from LabDesk. Mike, how you doing today?
Hi, Marco. Hi, everyone. I'm good, thank you.
And you're joining us from the UK, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm in Warrington in a dark and gloomy UK at the minute. Yeah, so it's 7 p.m. here at the minute, but that's yeah, it's getting a bit dark over here now.
Nice. Well, listen, I just want to welcome you to today's webcast and thank you very much for being a partner and helping us out on today's information session that we're sharing for MSPs. Maybe before I have some questions for you, do you want to tell us a little bit about your MSP practice?
Yeah, sure. So, hi guys. I'm Mike Douglas. I'm the co-founder and commercial director at LabDesk. We're a UK-based MSP, usually leading with Microsoft 365 technology or some level of cybersecurity. We have a focus on innovative sectors, so we've niched down, and those sectors normally fall in industries like energy. We do a lot within the nuclear sector, science, engineering, anywhere really where science security is key. Before LabDesk, I ran another MSP. That was a typical story. Techies launching an MSP, Started in that world as a break fix IT support business, transitioned to managed services, very much like Marco's journey of the MSP before. And then we sold that business back in 2020. So today, as part of LabDesk, my day-to-day focus really is looking at how we can add additional value to our partners, really, over and above a typical MSP offering. And again, this hence conversations and the main reason we reached out to Produce8. We obviously knew those guys had strong background in other MSP vendors, and just this technology looks different. We just need to be different, especially with the niches we're looking at now.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, so when you talk about we needed to be a little bit different, what makes you make that statement?
Just because the sectors just seem to be very saturated. I've been running MSPs for over 20 years now, and pretty much like your slide showed before, that transition from break fix IT type environment to managed services. Every MSP seems to have transitioned to a cybersecurity offering, and that's obviously not going to go away. Cybersecurity is a big opportunity, but again, every MSP we come up against today, most of them have got the same or very similar sort of security stack. Typically selling MSP contracts is hard anyway. So yeah, we just needed a different approach, exploring additional ways to add more revenue and more value to our partners, and to be able to charge a premium for that value. If we're adding more value, then we want to be able to sort of basically not be the cheapest, as opposed to just fighting over the scraps of the bottom end of the market.
Perfect. So when we started having our discussions with you and sharing, what we brought to the table, what motivated you to add, a productivity offering like digital work analytics to your offering?
Exactly that, really. I think just seeing the sector being saturated was just the main driver. We've explored other types of vendors out there. We're a big believer on experience level agreements over traditional just SLAs. So we first lent into that when I think it was a bit of a buzzword. A lot of MSPs started to sort of say they were offering experience level agreements, and that's, for anyone not in that space yet, it's basically just making sure the employees have a good experience instead of the MSPs just ticking an SLA type box. So we looked at other tools that could help with that, but most of the tools we looked at previous to this was very much sort of feedback tools. So you close a ticket, you take feedback. Yes, you can gauge if the member of the end users happy, sad, somewhere in between, but there was no real data around that. It was very much a paper pushing exercise. Yes, we've checked if your staff are okay. So this was really a bit of a standout. And again, as I mentioned before, just a totally different approach that sort of gauged our interest, really.
So when you kind of take a look at it, like over the last few years, you've obviously seen a change in the industry and in the market. That obviously differentiating yourselves from competition is key. Just curious, like as you go in and like, were you having customers ask you about, solutions like this, or is this just something that you've seen, like we need to kind of bring this type of offering to our customers?
A bit of both, but I think because we've been in a previous MSP before and we knew the grind of, just coming toe to toe with other MSPs, a lot of MSPs being very generic and vanilla, and that's our previous MSP fell in that space a little bit. But yeah, more recently, last couple of years, huge increase in the number of MSPs. We're a relatively young MSP ourselves, so because we've done it before, we could sort of early plan. We wanted LabDesk to be different. We've chosen a few verticals to go after. We tend to lead with a cybersecurity conversation as opposed to a typical just IT support. But yeah, going back to that point before, we just saw everyone focused on SLAs. and we saw a few examples where MSPs thought they were doing a good job for partners. You know, they were ticking the SLA box, they were charging big money. But it was, if you then went to speak to the actual staff within that business, they weren't happy. They weren't have a good experience. So, you know, as far as the business and the MSP were concerned, it was an okay relationship. They were doing the job, but the actual end users were had a bad experience. And we've got an example where we took over contracts, and when we interviewed those staff, and there was that business even had like an exit process. So when members of staff left, they filled out, you know, what was good and bad about the business, and everyone was complaining about the IT, and that was brand new news to that business owner because he was just looking at his nice shiny MSP reports, thought, you know, the MSP was doing a good job, but it's actually until you speak to the end users, you know, the guys and girls doing the work, that you really work out if you know, your team's aided with technology or hindered. So yeah, that was a big focus. There's just more and more tech now. There's a bit of tech overload. So, you know, we're ramming more apps and tools to our members of staff now. So it's just hard to give them a good experience when you've constantly just onboarding new versions and layering the tech stack as we do as MSPs. We like new apps, we like new toys.
Yeah.
But you know, end users typically don't. And yeah, we are perfectly placed really within a business to take over this type of conversation. You know, we already control a lot of the tech, a lot of the systems. You know, we can monitor and consult on team productivity and experience. So yeah, it's a good way to explore how we can drive additional value for those businesses.
Tell me something, Mike. Like when you're going in and having the initial conversation with your customer about Produce8 and digital work analytics and how we can, you know, assist and help with productivity or give you the data that you guys can actually make the changes or make the right decision in the business. Is it an enlightening conversation with them? Like, are they surprised that you're having this conversation with them, and how receptive are they with you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've got that sort of in a previous conversation I think we've had, but it's just an easier, it's just a nice conversation as opposed to, as I mentioned, it's a hard conversation now. You know, if any of the MSPs have tried going into an opportunity cold, you know, where it's cold calling, cold email, you know, pitching to someone that's already got an MSP, it's a hard conversation, and it's not, you know, they're not excited about it. So changing the conversation to be, you know, business led, process led, and ultimately we can then relate that to some sort of metric that they care about. And in the background, we can layer on the stuff that we can geek out about. You know, we can do that in the background, but ultimately, you know, business owners don't really care. They care about their business and their team, really. So.
And so when you kind of take a look at your service offerings in terms of your go-to-market strategy, is it changing a little bit? Like, for instance, it sounds like, you know, obviously security is an important piece of your business, but are you leading now with, you know, Produce8 or a digital works analytics type of conversation with your customer to get into?
Yeah, definitely for cold stuff. We don't really go in direct now for just typical MSP services. But one thing we have done is we've built out a fractional IT management service, so a bit like a fractional CTO. Yeah. And then we can do that as a standalone service. We can do that as a bolt-on to an MSP. And this role or service is basically focused on adding value, having a business conversation. As mentioned before, having a conversation that business owners or leaders want to have a conversation about. And then we can layer on the typical MSP services until hopefully long-term, we've got that full offering and that full contract that we wanted. And then with this data, you know, we're working with you guys on, you know, Produce8 and the reports and dashboards we can create. You know, we can then create true tangible, you know, value for the business that then can be measured over time, and having that regular touch point with the customer. It's just a better conversation. You know, as mentioned in our previous MSP, it got to a point where a lot of our customers didn't really want account reviews. It was, you know, they didn't want the reports that RMM spit out. It's, you know, he's trying to make that an exciting meeting was, you know, took more time than it was really worth. Whereas now it's we're now consultants. We're now consultant at business level, and then the MSP stuff can just come in and just bolt it all together.
That's it. That's an interesting point because we talk about it a lot here at Produce8, and we've even done a lot of discussions in the industry about QBRs and the VCIO talk track and the responsibility for an MSP. It sounds like this is really kind of reinvigorating, that VCIO QBR talk track that you might be having with your customers. Is it because it's a different conversation with them and everybody's interested in terms of how to be better at work, which is really the idea of what the platform is?
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole world seems to be changing to that employee first, employee experience. So it's not just a not just a buzzword that I think it was early on. It's now businesses are now realizing that we need to keep our staff happy. It's harder to hire now. We do some interviews now where sometimes it feels like the people you're interviewing are employing us and we're the ones offering the job. They want to know what the culture's like, what the benefits, what the team's like. So having this sort of data arms the businesses to create that environment. And again, with the world was obviously fully working in offices. We've then obviously gone through the COVID transition to fully remote, and there seems to be now a bit of a mix, bit of a pullback into offices. So this sort of this tooling and this offering now at least just gives businesses the data to make those decisions of actually what do our team members want and how can we attract new talent as well.
You've recently are working on a proof of concept right now. I think it's for a 50 user environment. Is that a new customer or an existing customer you have?
This is a new customer. And this is a standalone. So I mentioned the fractional IT offer before. This is a standalone service. So we're not the MSP. There's another MSP in there, and we're going to run in parallel with that one.
Interesting. So that goes a little bit with like when I was showing a little bit earlier on that slide that showed you can use this for acquisition, retention, and growth. You can leverage and you've proven it where you can leverage Produce8 to go in and provide digital work analytics, even if there's an account or an existing MSP that has the contract. And I'm assuming that your strategy is go in there, provide digital work analytics, and then kind of be the MSP that can try and displace the other MSP because you're going to be able to show a ton of value on that side of the business. Would that be fair?
Yeah, potentially. And again, it's sort of we're going in as sort of advisors. Again, whatever's right for the business at the time. It's just an easier conversation. Typically, wider sort of our view in it is just selling MSP services is hard, like I mentioned before. We speak to people, they're either in contracts, they're either happy with the current provider. Most people are just not looking to change. Even if someone's getting a subpar okay service, changing MSP service can be a pain, or is a pain, or some just don't outsource. So going in, talking about business processes, staff productivity, it just makes it easier to link it to something tangible, return on investment, just metrics that business owners and leaders want to have. Opens more opportunities within the business as well. With the data and results, we can speak in other areas of the business. So typically as an MSP, we've normally gone in trying to speak to the business owner, maybe the IT manager, depending on the size of the business. What we now can do is we can speak to other parts of the business. So we're now talking to revenue teams, maybe sales directors, we're talking to HR departments. And with this data, we're now getting involved with projects that as a typical MSP, we probably wouldn't. So we're now rolling out CRM solutions, we're doing project management tools, we've done a HR system. And then obviously over time, we want to layer in some of the MSP services back in, but all these, previous MSP, we just didn't do because it wasn't the thing that MSPs did then. So yeah, these types of conversations really just driving more conversations, more opportunities, and more revenue.
That's really interesting because, like we talk about it from, a Produce8 perspective, but Sounds like, it's opening even more doors for you on different projects, other technologies as well, more revenue that you can bring into the business just by bringing in a solution like Produce8 and having that conversation. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, it's I think yeah, when we launched LabDesk, we knew we had to be different. Being a relatively, most MSPs, you tend to follow the footprint of the been in business long time.
Sure.
It was only techies that started it, and most of them are typically referral-based businesses. So in between selling my own MSP and being involved with LabDesk, I was actually on the vendor side for a while, and saw how you guys do it in terms of brand messaging, adding value in that case. So we've sort of come out of the gates with LabDesk with a bit of a vendor mindset around how can we show value up front, and again just having that in the branding and messaging as well. So when we launched, that was our approach, again leading with a Microsoft sort of stack and the 365 tools, cybersecurity. But we just found over time that again those services were either looked after, or everyone we spoke with had pain elsewhere. They preferred to have a conversation around a pain point or a solution they needed. So we'd speak to people that had staff they didn't know how to manage with a system. We'd speak to people that were managing a sales team and they didn't know how to manage opportunities or didn't know how to automate any of the sales team's activities. Or the big one is really we're seeing people just losing track of how to manage projects. So we've zoned in on that type of conversation, and then obviously using Produce8, we can now obviously see where people are spending time and sort of help make educated sort of consultancy or decisions really.
That's fantastic. Question for you. We do have some people some MSPs, when we talk to them and they'll say, I'm not sure this is right, for my customer. I don't think they'll actually be prepared for something like this. How have the conversations gone from your perspective when you talk to existing customers or new customers? Do you find, they're very receptive to seeing how you can help, with employee experience and employee engagement and digital work analytics?
Yeah, I think again, we just got true MSPs. We're used to acronyms and being a bit too technical and scaring people off with how we speak. So again, we're trying to not go in with all the buzzwords for employee experience, but I think as soon as we have that, business conversation, getting more out of your team, adding value, helping growth. I think as long as you have that, once you realize who you're talking to, whether it's a business owner, typically they want to grow. Sales leaders, that's again a slight change in conversation around can we get more out of your current sales team? Can we can help 10x their activity as opposed to hiring more? So yeah, we just move the conversation to where they're comfortable, and then obviously this opens the door for conversations around Produce8, and then obviously where needed, we've obviously brought you guys in as well for a bit of support on that positioning as well.
So when you take a look at your existing customer base, what's your plan and strategy for bringing this? Does this become core to your managed services agreements that you bring forward to your customers, or what's your strategy in terms of bringing it to your existing accounts?
I think it'll change as time goes on. I think, as you've sort of mentioned, the industry is changing. It's still quite early for this conversation, but I think MSPs really need to start taking action now to get ready for the wave. Sort of leads quite well, obviously, with your sort of messaging. And it's a bit like our previous MSP. We started to get. This is going to show how old I am now, but we started to get murmurs that we made our money from hosted on-premise exchange, and we heard about this thing called hosted exchange, and we thought, we're not going to worry about that. And then we were on a back foot when Microsoft first launched their first hosted exchange, and we got told we're going to have to make money from selling £1 something mailboxes. But you change as a business, you adapt, you wrap services around it, and again with a cybersecurity conversation. So I think it's just about businesses now position themselves as that trusted advisor, even if it's not just leading on employee experience. Maybe that more just technical advisor in general,
Sure.
in terms of talking around growth, productivity, staff happiness and experience, and then obviously just making sure you've got the partners in place ready to deliver that. And as mentioned before, we tried to do it ourselves previously with different types of tools, feedback level tools, and MPS type scores. But again, it is pretty much very much that sort of stuff comes out the tin with a lot of PSAs and RMMs now, and there's not a lot of tangible data behind that other than a few smiley faces or frowns that you can just presume the member of staff's happy or not. So yeah, at least now we've got some true data that we can talk to them about.
Yeah, it's amazing in terms of the information, and like, you bring up data a lot, like the information that we're being able to share with organizations and companies is so significant. And I call it a game changer. It is very unique. You've been in MSP and I've been in the MSP space for a long time. I haven't seen any MSP that goes in and provides this level of information and data. So I'm sure that, even on this proof of concept that you're working on with this new customer, once, and we talked about this before the call, like once you're able to go in and share with them that information and that data, it's going to be an eye opener for them, right? Because nobody's ever been able to come to them to share with them that type of information when it comes to their employees and different aspects of the business. So I would assume that, as you acquire new customers, I'm sure it's going to help out with customer retention and create stickiness, and be very unique in terms of what you do. So, I'm excited to see what the future holds for you, Mike, and the team over at LabDesk. You guys are obviously, you're visionaries. You're looking down, you're looking ahead into the market. So, I appreciate it, and I look forward to hearing all the great stuff that you guys are doing. As we wrap up and we're just getting to running out of time here, what's your message for MSPs that are out there, right? Like when they're taking a look at, they're going to the events, they're taking a look at all these different technologies that are out there, which pretty much most of them are all the same, and they're just kind of, switching from one security solution onto the next, or a different cloud platform or an RMM solution, and Produce8 brings so unique in the industry. What do you say to the MSPs that are out there that are looking at a platform like this?
Uh, pretty much because you did prep me. Being honest with everyone, you did prep me on these questions, and basically you've just explained it exactly how I would. So we just class Produce8 as being totally unique. Most of the MSPs vendors that we speak to, it's normally some flavor of a Microsoft 365 bolt on. As you mentioned, some flavor of a cybersecurity stack, but there's a dime a dozen. They're all competing against each other, and it's like, as mentioned, we come against MSPs that have usually got the same MSP stack as us. And again, it's usually more for the end customer to try and work out which MSP to go with. It's hard for them to compare apples with apples, and that's sometimes we've lost business because we're not the cheapest. We like to feel like we add more value, but again, sometimes if an end customer's just looking at those quotes, sometimes they go straight on the price. So it just now gives us the ability to just lead with a different conversation. Sometimes that the business owner is quite taken back. If we don't want to have an IT conversation, we want to have a business conversation. How are the staff? Are they happy with the current setups? And usually that takes them back a little bit, and I think gives us a bit of an edge in that type of conversation. And then obviously, because it gives us real-time data around like technology utilization, staff time in meetings, staff time spent in emails. We get access to like staff sentiments, which obviously I can't remember if you touched on it earlier, but obviously taking pulses of actually, are the staff happy, are they not, and aggregating that data. So at a high level, you get a good feel all the time that if the staff are happy or not, just drives a better conversation and builds a better pipeline really. So that's our focus on sort of our future of marketing and messaging, and then that ultimately feeds basically an IT roadmap. So one of our offerings that we're building out into our fractional IT management service is having that IT and technology roadmap. And again, rather than just saying, right, at this point in time for your business, you're going to need this technology, you're going to need this vendor. We have, we want them to give us their business plan of, right, at what point are you growing, when are you adding staff, and then we'll align what technology they'll need to keep the staff happy, productive at each of those layers. And that's obviously going to lead to that stickiness, create that long-term relationship. And then for us, uncover those long-term opportunities.
That's amazing. Mike, thanks so much for your insight this afternoon, and your candor in terms of talking about the impact of Produce8 on your business. For anybody that's on the call today, if you have any other questions, you want to get in contact with us, you can send us an email at info@produce8.com, or you can visit us at produce8.com. We'd be more than happy to help you out and kind of talk to you exactly what we're doing with Mike and how he's incorporated this solution into his business and how it's helping him acquire new customers and create stickiness with the existing clients. So Mike, thank you very much again. Appreciate your time. Aaron, I'm not sure if there's any questions for us.
We just had a couple questions that were kind of ancillary to what was said already. But Mike, you mentioned dealing more with HR in the future or currently. How do you feel selling into that 75% of the company spending will be versus typical MSP sales? Do you think it's an easier sale or more difficult or just a different one?
I'd say a different one. But again, I think it's just another way into a business. I think as mentioned before, it's, bigger companies, it's the IT leadership that are getting hammered by MSPs are very much can we work with you? How do we get on the approved supplier list? It's usually a price conversation, or usually an IT manager's got a favorite MSP, so it's a hard conversation. Obviously, HR is a great conversation because they're the ones that are closest to the people of the business. They've got a good vibe of what they need. So getting buy-in there is a great start, and we've got a few separate HR tools around that basically go in for managing staff. But again, that then leads us on to, we're working with the guys at Produce8, and this is actually, as soon as they can see sort of the data around the time utilization as for the company aggregated, again, it's just an easy conversation. Then that sort of extra buy-in just helps when you do get to the decision maker in the business.
We had one other question similar, Mike. What size organization do you see this fitting well with, or is it more the type of organization or culture where there's a fit, in your opinion?
Again, Marco's probably more educated on this to answer that, but I'd sort of say high performing teams. So there's certain businesses that I know and we work with that I just wouldn't take this to, because they don't monitor this type of metric. They don't, they're not waking up every day working out how they can grow the business and looking at getting most out of the team. They like to tick over. They're a bit more of a reactive type business. Whereas we work with a lot of high performing teams that, they're either business owners or leadership that want to grow business quick. Maybe they've had funding, maybe they want to grow business faster than normal. Or it's individual teams, sales teams, obviously commissioned and obviously interested in, can we get more out of our sales team? So really, as long as you can find the incentive, and as I mentioned before, where that conversation that team likes to have, and then just pair this with it. But it's, again, I think it's rather than the size, I think it's it's just the type of person, really.
Yeah, Aaron, I'll even jump in on that. Like, I think from a fit, it's exactly kind of what Mike's saying, but we see a lot of value with Produce8 with organizations that are like a professional services company, clients that are billing, high performance. It fits well. Like, if somebody's sitting in front of a laptop and they're a knowledge worker, they're actually doing work day in and day out on, their device, then they're actually a good fit for Produce8, because I think everybody wants to know how they can improve what they do, right? And I've used this analogy many times before. It's like a Fitbit for work. Like, people spend so much time and energy and money on their personal well-being, fitness, diets. Produce8, you can look at it as it's a technology like that for work. And so if we have the ability to kind of increase the performance of culture of a company, of how they produce, and give them data and insights in terms of what's going on in the business, then I think any business is going to be a better off for using Produce8. And we really kind of focus on, like a strong reporting engine that an organization can see, hey, listen, what's going on within our business and where do we need to make changes, or where do we need to insert ourselves to help out? It could be a division of a company, it could be an employee, it could be, for instance, we have too many people working too many hours, and we notice that their sentiment score is really, really low. So we should be concerned because we want to ensure that we have a great work environment. So the nice thing about Produce8, it can fit in an organization as small as 5-10 employees and can scale into an organization that has thousands of employees. And that's where the fit is for digital work analytics and the opportunity in the market space. Aaron, I think we're at the max time today. Again, Mike, thank you so much for your insights. I think it was extremely valuable to hear how you use the platform and how you understand it and how you're going to market. To everybody that joined us today, thank you very much. Enjoy your day, and we'll talk with you soon. Thank you.